New tonight, a crisis for one local community, where the local water company is taking steps to make sure the drinking water is now safe.
Neighbors in Wilmington have been worried about their water since June when questions were raised about a toxic chemical known as GenX that was found in the drinking water. State regulators have said the company that discharged that chemical into the water had permission to do so, but investigative reporter Nick Oxner has uncovered documents that suggest otherwise.
When Wilmington residents open their faucets these days, they worry about the water coming out. For months, environmentalists and regulators have been trying to make sense of a toxic chemical known as GenX that was found in high amounts in the city's treated water supply. The chemical comes from this plant outside Fayetteville, formerly owned by DuPont and now operated by a company called Chemours.
The GenX was pumped into the Cape Fear River here at the Chemours Fayetteville plant, less than a mile from where I'm standing. It then flowed through the river more than about 100 miles down into Wilmington's water supply.
Chemours has acknowledged GenX was pumped into the river as a result of a manufacturing process, something DEQ Secretary Michael Regan told the Wilmington Star News didn't break any laws.
I thought that was wrong from the beginning.
Larry Cahoon is a biological oceanographer and professor at UNC Wilmington. He teaches the Clean Water Act and, along with other science colleagues, has been reviewing Chemours' permits and other documents in the GenX case.
You're a scientist.
Yep.
You can speak this language.
Right.
But most people can't.
Right.
Do you think part of the problem is no one knows what they're actually talking about?
That's a big part of the problem. I've seen some of the notes and some of the internal correspondence that took place between Chemours, DuPont, and various elected reps and agency folks and so forth. And it becomes clear that DuPont wasn't putting the proper details on the record.
One thing Cahoon and his colleagues have come across are these notes from a meeting between state regulators and the company back in June of 2015. The note suggests that regulators were told GenX wasn't being discharged into the river.
Now, we see notes that suggest that DuPont said they weren't discharging GenX. You see DEQ saying this discharge was permitted. How do you make sense of all this?
They're both wrong. DuPont was lying. As far as I can tell, they should have known what they were doing.
Governor Roy Cooper has ordered state investigators to launch an inquiry into the GenX situation, even though his DEQ secretary said the company didn't break any laws. Federal investigators are also on the case. And this week, state lawmakers have announced their own oversight committee to investigate the situation.
Are you satisfied that the state is doing everything it can right now to try to address this problem?
No. No.
State Senator Michael Lee represents Wilmington and Raleigh. He says he has questions for both the company that dumped GenX into the river and state regulators who say that was okay.
My constituents are drinking the water. My family, my children are drinking the water. I'm drinking the water. We want to make sure that the water is safe and continues to be safe.
Until the investigations are complete, residents like Larry Cahoon, the professor, will continue digging up their own answers and sharing their own opinions about whether this toxic chemical should have ever been in the river to begin with.
The bottom line is that that stuff should not have been in the water. Our regulatory agencies should have known that, and they should have made sure it didn't happen, and they failed to do that.
Reporting in Wilmington, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
A spokesman for DEQ refused to make the secretary available for an on-camera interview, but provided a statement late this afternoon saying in part, the state's investigation is ongoing and we are developing additional information to make a final determination about whether there were any violations of the law. Chemours told us it is working with state and federal regulators on this issue. We've posted much more about the story. We know you're interested in it, including our full interview with the UNCW professor. Just go to WBTV.com.
New tonight, an investigation into toxic chemicals dumped into the primary source of drinking water for thousands of North Carolinians has uncovered even more chemicals found in the Cape Fear River. WBTV investigative reporter Nick Oxter was the first to break this story this morning. He joins us live in Raleigh right now, where he questioned state leaders this afternoon. Nick?
Yeah, Paul, just more than an hour ago, I sat down with State Health Secretary Mandy Cohen and Secretary of Environmental Quality Michael Regan. Specifically, I wanted to ask them why they got the new information from the EPA about these new chemicals in the river as far back as Monday, but didn't tell the public about it until this morning. The answer, both secretaries tell me, is because the new chemicals found being dumped into the Cape Fear River by the company Chemours are a virtual mystery. The two chemicals have never been disclosed by the company before and have never been studied by scientists anywhere in the world. Because of that, Health Secretary Cohen said her scientists wanted to do a preliminary study of the chemicals discovered by the EPA and get a first reaction of whether the water that this chemicals was in was still safe to drink. That process, she said, took from Monday until yesterday.
Our team sort of dug in right away on the scientific data, and I'm very proud of them on how quickly they've turned it around so that we were able to share the information we're sharing today.
They've had 3 days now to politicize this and figure out their statement and their talking points. Enough with that. Get the information to the public and take action.
Now, that second person you just heard from there is the chairman of the local county commissioners down in Wilmington. Obviously, some people still questioning that delay, but Cohen said the important thing was to make sure this water is safe, which she stressed today the water in Wilmington is still safe for those folks to drink. A question that is not answered, though, is whether or not the company dumping this chemical in the water will stop doing it. We'll have more on that coming up on WBTV in prime time at 7 o'clock. For now, reporting live in Raleigh, Nick Oxner, WBTV. On your side.
More uncertainty about drinking water for tens of thousands of North Carolinians tonight after more chemicals are found in the Cape Fear River. The discovery comes as state and federal watchdogs monitor the river amid concerns prompted by the discovery of a chemical known as GenX, which was dumped into the river by a company outside of Fayetteville for years. Our investigative reporter Nick Oxner broke this story on the WBTV News app this morning. He is live now in Raleigh, where he has been questioning state leaders. Nick?
Yeah, Maureen, today's news comes because state environmental regulators asked the U.S. Department of the EPA to test the water in the Cape Fear River for more chemicals. Both agencies are investigating a company called Chemours that makes products like Teflon and discharges the byproducts of that production process into the Cape Fear River. The investigation began after questions surfaced about a different chemical Chemours was dumping into the river called GenX. Now, 2 more chemicals have been found, but there's no indication the company has stopped dumping those new chemicals into the river, which is used as drinking water for thousands of people in the Wilmington area. Leaders there now want to know why state regulators weren't acting faster to take action against the company.
What we can't figure out is why the chief enforcement officer of this state at DEQ, Secretary Reagan, and why his boss, Governor Cooper, aren't shutting the permit down, why they aren't revoking it.
Why don't you take some regulatory action today to make sure they're not polluting the Cape Fear River anymore? Why don't you act immediately?
We are going through a very thorough investigation. We are taking a look at all of the information that has been provided to us by the company over decades in the permit application, as well as all of the new information that we've requested from the company.
Now, a problem with these newly discovered chemicals is that they were previously undisclosed and have never been studied before by anyone in the world, so scientists here in North Carolina can't use any data. They have no information to determine a health safety level. Despite that, North Carolina's health secretary tells me the water is safe to drink with all the information that they know now. For now, reporting live in Raleigh, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
New worries tonight, Paul, for thousands of North Carolina residents who get their drinking water from the Cape Fear River. Regulators announced today 2 new chemicals have been found in the river linked to the same company under fire for discharging another toxin known as GenX. Investigative reporter Nick Oxner broke this story this morning on the WBTV News app. He went to Raleigh to sit down exclusively with the state's top officials handling this health crisis.
Tucked away less than a mile from the sleepy section of the Cape Fear River is a plant pumping chemicals into the water. That plant, owned by a company called Chemours, makes chemicals used in Teflon and other DuPont products. The compounds discharged into the water by Chemours floats about 100 miles downriver into Wilmington's water supply. This week, the EPA told state regulators 2 more chemicals had been found in the river near the plant. Regulators announced the new findings Thursday.
Well, you got this information from the EPA in a preliminary form Monday. Why did you wait until Thursday to release that information?
Our team sort of dug in right away on the scientific data, and I'm very proud of them on how quickly they've turned it around so that we were able to share the information we're sharing today.
State Health Secretary Mandy Cohen said it took days for scientists to process the new information from the EPA and determine water from the Cape Fear River was still safe to drink. But Wilmington leaders questioned the delay.
They've had 3 days now to politicize this and figure out their statement and their talking points. Enough with that. Get the information to the public and take action.
Woody White is chairman of the New Hanover County Commissioners. He said state leaders are dragging their feet on taking action against chemours to make sure the drinking water's safe.
What we can't figure out is why the chief enforcement officer of this state at DEQ, Secretary Reagan, and why his boss, Governor Cooper, aren't shutting the permit down, why they aren't revoking it.
Why don't you take some regulatory action today to make sure they're not polluting the Cape Fear River anymore? Why don't you act immediately?
We are going through a very thorough investigation. We are taking a look at all of the information that has been provided to us by the company over decades in the permit application, as well as all of the new information that we've requested from the company.
Reporting in Raleigh, Nick Oxner, WBTV, on your side.
The state officials wouldn't commit to a timeline for taking additional action to make the company stop dumping these newfound chemicals into the river, but they stressed the water is safe to drink.